The best of Money Matters. Under the Radar.
You're listening to Money FM 89.3, and it's now time for Under the Radar with me, Chua Tian Tian. Now, we're taking you to the skies today as we explore the ins and outs of the aerospace industry with GE Aerospace, the maker of engines powering Boeing and Airbus jets globally. Now, fun fact, GE Aerospace used to be a subsidiary of General Electric Company, a conglomerate founded by Thomas Edison. Yes, we are talking about the man who was credited with commercializing the good old light bulbs. Now, that was before GE was split into three separate companies, namely GE Aerospace, GE Vernova, that's the energy unit, and of course GE Healthcare in April 2024. Now, back to GE Aerospace. The firm today is a world-leading provider of engines as well as integrated systems for commercial, military, business, and general aviation aircraft. The company's business can be generally split into two major verticals, namely the first vertical, commercial engines and services, and the second vertical, defense and propulsion technologies. Its presence is felt all around the world, and particularly so in the Asia-Pacific region. After all, the firm set foot in APAC over 40 years ago and now has a footprint in over 25 countries, serving over 110 clients. The firm says over 3,800 engines made by GE Aerospace and its joint venture company CFM International power flights across the region. But why are we speaking to GE Aerospace, you might ask? Well, we want to find out how the firm is doing right now, 1 year after it started operating as a standalone company, and how it intends to navigate an uncertain operating environment in the near term. Meanwhile, GE Aerospace had also in July 2024 announced plans to invest over $1 billion over 5 years in its maintenance, repair and overhaul, also what's known as MRO, and component repair facilities worldwide. But what was the rationale behind the move, and what can we look forward to right here in Singapore then? Well, lots of questions, and joining me right here in the studio is Ian Roger, Managing Director at GE Aerospace Singapore. Ian, welcome.
Thank you, Tian Tian. Thank you for letting me share some of the information about GE Aerospace.
Great to have you. And, Ian, GE Aerospace needs little introduction as a provider of engines, integrated systems for commercial, military, business and general aviation aircraft. But if we could go back to basics for this conversation, how would you describe the firm's value proposition and business model?
Okay, well, GE Aerospace is a global aerospace propulsion, services and systems leader with an installed base of about 45,000 engines, commercial engines, and 25,000 military aircraft engines. We have a global team of about 53,000 employees, building on more than a century of innovation, as you said, after Thomas Edison, and learning. And GE Aerospace is committed to inventing the future of flight, lifting people up and bringing them home safely. We have the most complete value proposition for propulsion and services across wide body, narrow body and regional markets. If you think every 2 seconds, or that's every three out of 4 aircraft you see flying, are powered by GE Aerospace engines. That equates to about 950,000 people at any point in time are relying on us to lift them up and bring them home safely. As we support our customers' growth around the world, we're taking an across-the-board approach to a more sustainable future of flight, advancing the development of more efficient aircraft engines, compatible with alternative fuels, and collaborating across the industry.
I see. Well, Ian, let's have a look at GE Aerospace product offerings. Earlier, we talked about how the firm's business can be split into two major verticals. The first one being commercial engines and services. The second one being defense and propulsion technologies. Take us through the various verticals, and ultimately, when it boils down to dollars and cents on your balance sheet, both as a firm and as GE Aerospace Singapore, which is the most important vertical?
So as you say, commercial and defence are two major areas of the business as we set out to shape the future of flight. So commercial engines and services business represents the industry's largest and growing commercial propulsion fleet. We support that installed base of 45,000 engines with comprehensive service solutions to address all phases of the product life cycle, which can last over 30 years. $27 billion revenue in 2024 for the commercial business, with services representing 75% of our revenue. So services, what we do here in Singapore, is a very significant part of the business. If I take the main products, the GNX engine is the fastest selling wide-body engine in the industry. With its superior efficiency, it powers many of the longest Boeing 787 Dreamliner routes. In the narrow-body space, we have built the LEAP engines as part of our CFM joint venture with Safran. And the LEAP engine, we call it the ABC. The 1A is for the Airbus 320, the 1B for the Boeing 737 MAX. And few people realize that the 1C is for the new Chinese COMAC 919 aircraft.
Yes.
So our engine that's in the final stages of testing, the next engine that's going to enter service is the GE 9X, and that is the largest and most powerful commercial aircraft engine ever built. It's designed specifically for the new twin-engine Boeing 777X. The 9X is the most fuel-efficient engine in its class. And, of course, Singapore Airlines is one of our customers for this engine for its upcoming Boeing 777X fleet. On the other hand, the defence business, the segment is the leading provider of defence engines for critical aircraft systems and is comprised of defence and systems and propulsion additive technologies. $9.5 billion revenue in 2024 and over 25,000 engines deployed around the world. But here in Asia Pacific, we have over 4,500 military engines and services. And we play a pivotal role through that in safeguarding the security of nations across the region, mainly South Korea, Japan, Australia. And here in Singapore, we're proud to power several of the Republic of Singapore Air Force's fighter aircraft and helicopter fleets. So the Boeing F-15 SGs, powered by the F-110, and the Apache AH-64, powered by the T-700 engine. Very proud to do that for the Air Force here in Singapore.
Okay, you talked about Singapore Airlines, you talked about the Air Force, you also talked about the military in South Korea and etc. So let's talk about customers then, Ian. GE Aerospace is known to be the maker of jet engines used in our Airbus and Boeing planes, hence customers like SIA. But what would you say is the split between your public and commercial clients? Any names you can share right here?
Of course, yeah. We're very proud of our strong and long partnerships with both Boeing and Airbus. And we have partnerships with all of the major airlines around the world. We provide commercial and military engines as well as services, as I said. But here in Asia Pacific, the service organisation that I represent, we provide aircraft engines, engine component manufacturing and repair services to more than 100 customers in APAC, including major flagship airlines like Singapore Airlines, of course, Japan Airlines, ANA, Korean Air, Qantas, Malaysia Airlines, Thai Airways. We also support low-cost carriers such as Air Asia.
So right to say that for the products like the engine itself, the customers would be Boeing and Airbus, but for the services itself, the customers would be the airlines? Well,
it depends, Tian, on the service model that our customers choose. Some of our customers will choose time and material, so they actually purchase the engines. But most of our customers these days have service agreements where the engine is effectively leased. And the choice of the engine, if there is a choice on the airframe, is determined by the airlines. But some aircraft, like the 777X that I mentioned earlier, is a sole engine offering, which the customers can only choose the GE Aerospace offering.
Don't mind me asking this, only if it's comfortable on your end. What is the split between public and private clients or contracts? Is it mainly driven by the commercial business or mainly driven by the public contracts business, at least for GE Singapore, GE Aerospace Singapore?
So for GE Aerospace Singapore, 70% of our output is actually sent to other parts of GE Aerospace or engine overhaul shops, and 30% is direct sales to customers, be it airlines or brokers. But most of our sales is commercial rated and not to public.
I see. Well, let's take a look at your regional footprint, Ian, because GE Aerospace set foot in APAC over 40 years ago. Now has a footprint in over 25 countries, serving over 110 clients. Now, over 3,800 engines made by GE Aerospace and its JV company, CFM International, power flights across the region. You mentioned some exciting numbers earlier at the start of the interview. So take us through your regional footprint and how important is Singapore as a market to GE Aerospace financially and strategically?
Okay, well, Singapore for us is not a little red dot. Singapore is home to our largest component repair facility, responsible for more than 60% of our global repair volume. Here in Singapore, we're actually the first MRO facility worldwide to pioneer the use of additive technology to directly repair aircraft engine parts. That helps us reduce turnaround time. Turnaround time is probably the most important factor and value proposition for our customers. So everything we can do to reduce our turnaround time is hugely important and valued. But that reduction in turnaround time and that reduction in footprint is enabling our growth here in the region, and specifically Singapore. We create significant local employment opportunities here. We employ more than 2,000. I think 2,200 is a more accurate number here in Singapore. And we continue to see Singapore as an important market for GE Aerospace. We receive amazing support from the Economic Development Board. Of course, I have to single out tripartism as something that really makes things work for us well here in Singapore, and the amazing education and academic ecosystem that enables us to continue to build and upskill what we do in our technologies.
You mentioned how Singapore is not just a little red dot for GE Aerospace, but in terms of importance to GE Aerospace as a company as a whole, or GE Aerospace APAC, is it more of a strategic market to set up your maybe regional office, or is it more of a revenue and profit generating market for you?
It's actually a little bit of both, because Singapore, one of the industrial strategies of Singapore is focusing on MRO. So Singapore is one of the global MRO hubs. That's extremely important to us, and that's why we choose to base our largest MRO facility here in Singapore. But it also gives us access to relationships with customers around the region.
Okay. Now let's take a look at where things are at for GE Aerospace right now, Ian. GE Aerospace, as we know, was spun off when General Electric completed its breakup into 3 companies, namely GE Aerospace, GE Vernova, the energy unit, and GE Healthcare back in April 2024. How would you describe the transition 1 year on? Were there any significant changes or updates to the firm's strategy? How has that filtered through to your operations right here in Singapore?
It's been an absolutely incredible journey. I mean, moving from a conglomerate to a very focused business has given us all very much more focus and more clarity for our customers and our stakeholders, and they can understand a lot more about what we're doing and how we're improving. We had a very, very strong start to the year. The first quarter, double-digit growth in both services and equipment, thanks to Flight Deck, which is something we launched around about the same time as we spun off. Flight Deck is our proprietary lean operating model, and we operationalize safety through our safety management system, our quality management system, enabling us to identify safety risks and actively work to mitigate those risks through root cause and problem solving. But Flight Deck specifically is, I said, our lean proprietary operating model that enables us to translate strategy to operational and financial results, and ultimately drive the culture that we have. And if I can give you an example here in Singapore, our turbine nozzles business at Loyang, which is about a $1 billion US dollar revenue business, it was situated across 3 floors. After applying Flight Deck, which is Kaizen, identifying waste to improve flow, reimagining processes, the entire 4th floor was cleared. So we saved 33% footprint, increased output and sales by 80% with very little capital expenditure. So applying lean techniques through our Flight Deck model, along with the technological advances we're making here in Singapore, it all serves a common goal: better serving our customers and preparing the ground for significant growth that we see coming soon.
If I could take some time to talk about the wider business environment, Ian, the firm had in April 2025, along with industry peer RTX, expected this over $1 billion US dollar impact from US import tariffs. Now, we know that GE Aerospace maintained its earnings outlook for 2025 at a global level in its Q1 2025 earnings. A bit of a sensitive question, so I'm keeping it generic, but generally speaking, how is demand looking like for GE Aerospace jet engines, your aftermarket services, in light of the global headwinds?
We're watching demand very closely, but what I can share is that in the first quarter we saw continued demand for both our services and products. We secured remarkable engine commitments with regional customers here, ANA in Japan, for LEAP and GNX engines. Malaysia Aviation Group ordered LEAP engines, and Korean Air ordered both GNX and 9X engines. And if you saw reporting in recent weeks, we've seen the largest wide-body order that we've had in the company's history as Qatar and Etihad made that order for GNX engines for 787 and for 9X for their upcoming 777X fleets. But we don't take these things for granted. We are taking steps with our suppliers to increase material inputs within our own operations to expand capacity, ensuring we're positioned to meet this demand. And as Larry shared on our earnings call last month, we're taking several actions to help mitigate the potential impact of tariffs so we can continue to delivering for our customers.
I see. My second part of the question actually is, how does GE Aerospace intend to navigate a more uncertain global operating environment? But I suppose you mentioned earlier as well. So can we assume maybe more flexibility in terms of coping with demand and coping with maybe decreased demand in times of uncertainty, and that influx of demand back when things become more certain?
So we definitely don't see a decrease in demand.
Okay.
We're seeing a continued increase in demand, which is very pleasing. But our focus remains in enabling our customers' growth in that demand by delivering innovative technologies, world-class services and sustainable solutions. For tariffs specifically, we continue to advocate for a return to zero tariffs in the industry to ensure a level playing field. More broadly, guided by Flight Tech, we continue to work closely with our priority suppliers to ensure on-time delivery for customers. We've embedded about 550 supply chain and engineering resources and headcount into suppliers to help identify, eliminate constraints, collaborating with them to improve their quality and delivery performance to support our customers' growth.
Staying true to the value proposition and positioning as well. Now, if you're just tuning in, we're now in conversation with Ian Roger, Managing Director at GE Aerospace Singapore. Well, Ian, on the public sector side of things, if I may, we've seen an uptick in defense spending globally of late. If I could tap your brains on this one, how far will that trickle down to GE Aerospace's financials, not just in Singapore, but in the region?
So we're definitely seeing an increase in uptick in defence spending, as you say, with the situation around the globe. And we are one of the leading providers of fighter aircraft jets and systems to support those aircraft, as well as helicopter engines. So we definitely see that as something that GE will be supporting, that growth in spend.
And looking solely at the commercial aviation sector, in which GE Aerospace Singapore is very focused in as well, we have analysts from DBS saying in February 2025 that robust aftermarket services demand is set to underpin earnings growth for the firm, and this is given ongoing delays in new aircraft delivery and how airlines will then need to extend the lives of previous generation engines and utilize those engines more often. So DBS analysts, they project GE Aerospace's adjusted earnings per share to surge at 20 to 30% CAGR over the next 2 years, driven by what is described as strong demand for lucrative, mature engine work. How far do you agree with that?
So as I said before, services constitutes about 75% of our revenue, and it always has been a big part of our business. You know, over the length of a commercial engine will be 20, 30, sometimes even over 40 years life cycle. So our job and what we do in services is actually to prolong that life. So the DBS analysts are pointing that out, that we see the length and the extended length of engines, and that's what we do. We provide that service to extend the life of the engines. We do see rapid growth in demand for the aftermarket services. I mean, the first quarter of this year, for example, we saw double-digit service revenue growth. And our Singapore facility is significant in this because it's our largest engine component site globally, responsible for more than 60% of our repair volume. So as demand continues to outpace supply, we're utilising flight deck to drive improvements and tackle supply chain constraints head on, to accelerate deliveries, to enable us to provide this service and extension of life. The progress we made in 24 was significant, with sequential improvements in addressing those supply chain constraints. It's a 26% increase in material inputs across priority supplier sites from the first to the second half of the year. So in terms of the analysis, looking at the new engines and the entry to service of aircraft, maybe even slightly later, we're actually working to provide the service of the engines that will fill that gap.
Don't mind me asking this, Ian, and this is just off the top of my head. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Delays in new aircraft delivery, that seems to be driven by the COVID-19 pandemic and the backlog. We are still seeing it being present so far. How long do you expect that backlog to continue, and how would that, affect demand for your aftermarket services as that backlog sort of eases?
Yeah, so you're right to say that COVID did have an impact on that, and we saw coming out of COVID some challenges in building up supply chains. But we definitely see, as I mentioned before, that progress that we've made on increasing material inputs by 26% by strategically working with our suppliers to support them through. But we definitely see the growth coming as we saw towards the end of 2024, the first quarter of this year, and those delays are significantly reduced compared to where they were previously.
So even with reduced delays, we are still seeing increased demand for aftermarket services?
Most definitely. Okay. And seeing our largest order last week in Qatar is quite something.
In that case, what are the trends underpinning this increased demand in aftermarket services if it is not for the delays in aircraft delivery?
So it's generally, as people are recovering back from COVID, there is this increased demand for flight and travel, and it's great to see. I mean, that's what definitely drives our purpose.
And in the meantime, Ian talked about something interesting. GE Aerospace also in July 2024 announced plans to invest over $1 billion in over 5 years in its maintenance, repair and overhaul, or what we call the MRO, as well as component repair facilities worldwide. What was the rationale behind the move, and what can we expect right here in Singapore?
So we've committed, as you say, to invest $1 billion so far in our MRO component repair facilities over the next 5 years. Approximately $45 million of that was allocated to Asia Pacific region as part of $250 million that was global spend in 24. And that included our facilities here in Singapore, Malaysia, Taiwan and South Korea. What this investment does is it creates capacity for both the wide body and narrow body engine maintenance by adding additional engine test cells and equipment, and help fund facility expansions that we see here in Singapore, new machinery, new technologies, tooling and safety enhancements. The investment comes amid strong growth in the aviation sector in Singapore and the region as we continue to push the boundaries of innovation and nurture our workforce and upskill our workforce to cater to the rise in demand. So we also announced, specifically here in Singapore, an investment of $11 million to introduce a cutting-edge technology development facility that will develop new technologies to enable us to be more productive and reduce footprint. And that's just the start, because we're going to treat that as a technology incubator that will develop more robotics, more automation, more additive technologies, digitalization, as we develop our productivity and upskill our workforce here in Singapore to cope with the growth.
Is it right to say that your Singapore operations or your Singapore hub will take a greater role in tech innovation in GE Aerospace APAC?
That's for sure. And that goes back to the ecosystem that supports it. The academic and education system we hear provides a pipeline of talent to come through and deal with these advanced technologies.
And Ian, if we set our sights on the longer term, right, what do you think are the key trends to watch for the aerospace and defense industry? How is the firm capitalizing on these trends? And if we go back to Singapore and APAC, what are the key opportunities for growth in the region?
So rising demand would be the first of those themes. So in APAC, rising air travel demand is high. Singapore's strategic role and geographical position as a global MRO hub, supported by robust infrastructure of the skilled workforce, it continues to create great opportunities for us, and it's going to strengthen Singapore's global position as an aerospace hub, including the government's $1 billion investment that we see at Changi Air Hub. On top of that rise in demand, or to support that rise in demand, is the new technologies and innovations that we're developing. So growth opportunities in additive manufacturing, digitalization, automation and robotics, they will drive more technically skilled jobs and help transform operations, improve efficiency and turnaround times, and create footprint for growth. The third theme is sustainability. The industry's focus on decarbonisation is driving advancements in sustainable aviation, fuels, hybrid electric propulsion, and disruptive technologies like our revolutionary Innovation for Sustainable Engines program, also known as RISE, R-I-S-E. That's in partnership with Safran and CFM, and that aims to achieve a step change in greater than 20% fuel efficiency and reduce emissions.
I see. And before we let you go, Ian, again, keep us excited. What are some future plans for GE Aerospace for perhaps the rest of this year into the next? What can we look forward to right here in Singapore?
So we continue to focus on our development of flight deck, the lean model that we use, and those savings and footprint to enable growth and sales. 30% footprint reduction, 80% increase in sales is something we're really excited about. But as I shared earlier, we've already started integrating new equipment into this facility at Seletar Aerospace Park for our technology development, our technology incubator, and we're developing plans for, as we develop those technologies, for further growth in our services and capabilities here in Singapore. So I guess I would say watch this space as we develop those plans further.
Okay, watch this space and watch the skies. Thank you so much for the insights, Ian. That was Ian Roger, Managing Director at GE Aerospace Singapore. Thank you so much for joining us on Money FM 89.3.
Thank you. Thank you, Tian Tian.
Before acting on the information on Money FM, please consider if it's suitable for your own investment objectives, financial situation, and risk tolerance. To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.